There is a particular kind of American town that the rest of the country tends to overlook. Not large enough to anchor a news story, not small enough to be called quaint. Athens, Ohio sits in the southeastern corner of the state, tucked into the Appalachian foothills, where the land rolls and the winters settle in without apology. The population hovers around 25,000. There is a university, Ohio University, which brings a certain amount of life and noise to the otherwise unhurried pace of the place. And there, in that town, on the December 10, 1996, Joseph Lee Burrow was born. He was not born there technically. His birth took place in Ames, Iowa, where his father, Jimmy Burrow, was working at the time, but Athens was home. Athens was where he grew up, where he played in the yard, where he first learned what it meant to compete, to lose, to try again. It was a football household in the fullest sense of the word. Jimmy Burrow had played in the NFL as a safety before moving into coaching, eventually becoming the defensive coordinator at Ohio University. The Burrow family did not merely watch football, they lived inside it. He attended Athens High School, and there he began to reveal what he was capable of. By his senior season, he had thrown for nearly 4,500 yards and 63 touchdown passes. He was named Ohio Mr. Football, the highest individual honor a high school player in the state can receive. He was fast enough, smart enough, accurate enough. Scouts took notice, college programs sent letters, and yet, the attention was not what one might expect for a player of his caliber. The big schools were interested, but not urgently so. He was considered a good prospect, not a great one. He chose Ohio State. Ohio State is one of the most storied programs in the history of college football. The Horseshoe, as Ohio Stadium is known, seats over 100,000 people. The practice facilities are immaculate. The coaching staff is built from men who have spent decades at the top of the profession. The talent pipeline runs deep, and in 2015, when Joe Burrow arrived as a freshman, he entered a depth chart that was already stacked with quarterbacks who were better known, more heavily recruited, and more immediately trusted than he was. In 3 seasons at Ohio State, Joe Burrow appeared in 10 games. He completed 29 passes for 287 yards and threw 2 touchdowns. Those numbers do not tell the story of a player who struggled. They tell the story of a player who was given almost no stage on which to perform. He practiced every day. He studied film every night. He competed in practice at a level that impressed his coaches and teammates alike. But when Saturday came and the stadium filled, he stood on the sideline in a backup jersey and watched other men play the game he had spent his entire life preparing for. He practiced every day. He studied film every night. But when Saturday came, he stood on the sideline and watched. There is a specific kind of frustration that comes with being capable and invisible simultaneously. It is not the frustration of failure. It is the frustration of unrealized potential, of knowing what you can do and finding no arena in which to prove it. Burrow managed that frustration with the discipline that would later be recognized as one of his defining characteristics. He did not sulk publicly. He did not demand playing time in the press. He worked, he waited, and eventually, he made a decision that would change everything. In the spring of 2018, Joe Burrow graduated from Ohio State with a bachelor's degree in Consumer and Family Financial Services. He had spent 3 years at one of the most competitive programs in the country and emerged with a diploma and 287 passing yards to his name. Instead, he transferred. He chose Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge. He chose a program that needed a quarterback. He chose, in the language of football, to start over. The transfer was not, initially, greeted with particular excitement in Baton Rouge. SU had a strong football tradition, but at quarterback, the program had struggled in recent years to develop a player who could match the talent elsewhere on the roster. When Joe Burrow arrived as a graduate transfer in 2018, eligible to play immediately, the expectation was modest. Here was a guy from Ohio State, a school that had just produced Dwayne Haskins, and Burrow hadn't beaten him out. What, exactly, was the plan? What changed in 2019 defies easy explanation. Part of it was coaching. SU hired Joe Brady away from the New Orleans Saints, where Brady had been working as a passing game specialist under Sean Payton. Brady brought with him a system built on spacing, timing, and the kind of rhythm passing that places enormous trust in the quarterback's ability to read a defense quickly and deliver the ball on time. It was, in essence, a professional offense transplanted into a college context, and it fit Joe Burrow as though it had been designed specifically for him. The 2019 college football season began in early September, and by October, it was becoming clear that something unusual was happening in Baton Rouge. SU was ranked highly, as it often was, but the offense was operating at a level that the program had not seen in decades. Burrow was completing passes with a precision and consistency that was attracting attention from coaches, analysts, and scouts across the country. The numbers were not merely good, they were historic. Against Texas, he threw for 471 yards and 4 touchdowns, but the game that announced his season to the national audience came on November 9th, in Tuscaloosa, when SU traveled to face Alabama. Alabama had beaten SU 8 consecutive times entering that night. Burrow completed 31 of 39 passes for 393 yards and 3 touchdowns. SU won 46-41. It was the kind of performance that silences a rival stadium. He finished the 2019 regular season with 5,671 passing yards, which set the SEC single-season record. He threw 60 touchdown passes, which broke the FBS single-season record. His completion percentage was 76.3%. His passer rating was 202. SU finished 13-0, and there was only one award that mattered most. On December 14, 2019, Joe Burrow stood at the podium at the New York Interborough Ballroom to accept the Heisman Trophy. He had won it by the largest margin in the 85-year history of the award. But the moment that most people who watched that evening remember was not the trophy itself. It was what he said in his acceptance speech. He spoke about Athens, Ohio. He spoke about poverty, about the children in his community who went to school hungry, about the families in Appalachian, Ohio who struggled in ways that the national conversation rarely acknowledged. The college football playoff arrived in January, and SU entered as the clear favorite. In the semifinal, the Peach Bowl against Oklahoma, Burrow played what many analysts would later describe as one of the greatest individual performances in the history of college football. He completed 29 of 39 passes for 493 yards and 7 passing touchdowns. He also rushed for a score, 8 total touchdowns. The game was not close. SU won 63-28. The national championship game was played on January 13, 2020 in New Orleans against Clemson University. Clemson was undefeated. They were the defending national champions. Burrow completed 22 of 38 passes for 463 yards and 5 touchdowns. He also ran for a score. SU won 42-25. The Tigers finished 15-0. Burrow was named the game's offensive MVP. In the 2 playoff games combined, he had completed 51 of 77 passes for 956 yards and 12 touchdowns against 2 of the best defenses in the country. The NFL draft was for months away. The consensus was immediate and absolute. Joe Burrow was going to be the #1 overall pick. The only question was which franchise would hold that selection. The answer was the Cincinnati Bengals. There is a certain irony in that geography. Cincinnati is roughly 2.5 hours from Athens, Ohio. Joe Burrow was going home, in a manner of speaking. On April 23, 2020, Roger Goodell announced the first pick. The Cincinnati Bengals selected Joe Burrow, quarterback, SU. The early career of Joe Burrow is not, in the traditional sense, a story about talent. Talent was always there. What the early career of Joe Burrow is actually about is the relationship between time and readiness. He was not ready, in the way that readiness is recognized by football programs, when he arrived at Ohio State. The transfer to SU was not a defeat. It was a recalibration, a decision to find the right environment rather than wait indefinitely in the wrong one. The person who seems to be failing in one context maybe thriving waiting to happen in another. Joe Burrow at Ohio State was not a lesser version of Joe Burrow at SU. He was the same person, the same mind, the same competitor, placed in circumstances that did not yet reveal what he was capable of. When the revelation finally came, it did not feel like a surprise to those who had paid attention. It felt like an inevitable arrival, like watching a door finally open that had been locked for far too long. The boy from Athens had become what everyone who believed in him always suspected he could become.